New York City, around 1905. A window cleaner is suspended on a wooden board outside the upper floors of a downtown office building. The board is roughly 12 inches wide, hanging from a single hemp rope anchored to the roof. Below him, several hundred feet of open air and the street. Some workers wore a leather safety belt, clipped to an anchor bolt in the facade. Many did not. There was no legal requirement. Before modern safety regulations covered this kind of work, the maintenance of glass-clad skyscrapers depended entirely on workers who climbed out over the edge and found a way to do the job. The accident rate was high. The pay was modest. The work was continuous. New York's skyline changed faster than any city in the world between 1890 and 1915. The Singer Tower reached 612 feet. The Metropolitan Life Tower rose to 700 feet. The Woolworth Building, completed in 1913, stood 792 feet above Broadway, the tallest building in the world for 17 years. These buildings were sold on light. Their facades were layered with glass. Thousands of panes across the building. A dirty window cost landlords tenants, and tenants their premium rates. Coal smoke, soot from elevated railways, and construction dust settled on glass within days. But who, exactly, was supposed to clean the outside of a window on the 40th floor? The window cleaning workforce in early 20th century New York was drawn almost entirely from recent immigrant communities, Polish, Italian, Irish, and Eastern European workers who had arrived with few contacts and limited English. The trade required no formal qualifications and no licensing. Pay was better than many factory jobs. A window cleaner in New York around 1910 could earn between $2 and $3 per day, comparable to skilled building trades workers, and significantly above unskilled factory wages. Hours were irregular, dependent on weather, and the contracts held by whichever cleaning company employed the crew. Working conditions offered no structural protections. There was no standardized safety inspection, no required training, and no compensation system for injured workers. The job paid reasonably. Everything else was the worker's problem. Window cleaners faced two primary physical hazards: working at extreme height on surfaces that offered limited grip, and exposure to wind conditions that were difficult to predict and impossible to control. At heights above 300 feet, wind behavior along a building facade differed substantially from conditions at street level. Air accelerated through gaps between buildings, reversed direction around corners, and created lateral forces that could push a worker several feet off his position without warning. Falls from dropped equipment were a documented cause of street-level fatalities. A tool weighing 2 pounds, falling 400 feet, reached the sidewalk with sufficient force to kill a pedestrian. Adverse weather, rain, ice on the sills, temperatures that made rope handling difficult, suspended work but was not always recognized as grounds for stopping by employers under time and contract pressure. Each descent began with an inspection of the equipment. Hemp and manila rope degraded with use. Moisture rotted the fibers from inside. Friction against stone frayed the outer strands. A rope in service for weeks without inspection was a liability. The anchor on the roof was tested before the rope was attached. The cleaning sequence followed a fixed procedure. Before stepping outside, the worker clipped both terminals of the safety belt to the anchor bolts on either side of the window frame. For rope descent work, the bosun's chair was used. A wooden plank, roughly 24 inches long, 10 inches wide and 2 inches thick, suspended by rope at each corner. Manila line about 5/8 of an inch thick, rated well beyond the combined weight of a worker and his equipment. The bosun's chair was lowered by friction control, stopping at each window in turn. The standard cleaning tool of the period was the Chicago squeegee, a heavy steel implement with 2 thick rubber blades held in place by 12 screws. Changing a worn blade meant resetting all 12. Despite the weight, it remained the trade standard for decades, until lighter brass squeegees replaced it from the 1930s onward. Cleaning proceeded in 2 steps. A wet sponge with soap or ammonia solution applied first to break down the soot, followed by the squeegee, drawn across the pane in a single continuous stroke from top to bottom. A second pass corrected streaks. On a building like the Woolworth, A crew worked systematically across each elevation, floor by floor, repositioning the anchor rope as each section was completed. The Singer Tower, the Metropolitan Life Building, and the Woolworth Building each contained thousands of windows, not a uniform grid, but a mixture of standard panes, recessed spandrels, and ornamental sections requiring different techniques. Some windows were too narrow to step out from directly. Workers reached across from an adjacent sill, leaning on the belt, cleaning at an angle. Experienced workers kept mental maps of each building, which sections gusted, which anchor points had given trouble. This knowledge was carried from building to building as long as a worker stayed in the trade. By 1916, newspaper estimates put the number of window cleaners working in New York City at around 3,000. Injury was the worker's problem. Death was the family's problem. Families turned to mutual aid societies for death benefits when the employer provided none. The falls happened regularly enough that they stopped appearing as singular events. Newspapers called them human flies, workers who clung to vertical glass hundreds of feet above the street. The image was useful to building owners. A gleaming facade was an advertisement. Those workers were listed in building accounts alongside boiler maintenance and elevator repair. Although the work was essential, the men who did it remained largely invisible. When the accident record could no longer be ignored, New York State responded by enacting its labor law and industrial code, rules administered by the Department of Labor that gradually established requirements for anchor bolts, safety belts, equipment inspection, and approved methods of work. There was no single moment of reform. The rules accumulated over years, shaped by deaths and pressure from labor groups. By the late 1920s and 1930s, suspended steel scaffolds had begun replacing ledge work on major buildings. Geared winches replaced improvised rope systems. Multi-worker swing stages introduced redundancy and speed the single-man methods had never provided. The buildings had outgrown what one worker on a stone ledge could reasonably maintain. The Woolworth Building opened in 1913 with 792 feet of glass rising above Broadway. Soon after the opening, window cleaning crews had begun working their way down its surface. They brought with them knowledge of rope behavior, of anchor assessment, of weather and wind and the resistance of soot against a squeegee blade. The city needed the glass clean. The demand was met by workers from Eastern Europe, from Italy and Ireland, who climbed to the rooftops of the tallest buildings in the world and found a way to do the job. The systems that shaped this city were built by people whose names rarely appear in the histories. If you'd like to see more of them preserved, consider subscribing. And tell us, which hidden trade should we document next?